All right, there's a very freaky phenomenon going on, and I'm wondering if you have noticed.
His name is SJ.
The greatest phenomenon of all time. No, let me tell you a story. I'm very proud of this story. Is Chris in here? No, he's in the atrium. You guys see my pink Nike hat? Nice. Chris, who's playing the bass tonight, has a pink Nike beanie. I went to Goodwill, trying to find some cool pink stuff. Didn't have any cool pink stuff. I went to Hobby Lobby to try and find a pink beanie. They didn't have it. Everybody look at Chris's pink beanie. Chris, you're gonna wanna hear this story. I love this story. I lived it 4 hours ago. So I couldn't find any cool pink beanies. So Chris was like, we should go to Dick's because they have a lot of Carhartt stuff. I was like, that's a really good idea. So me and Chris get in his truck. We go over there to Dick's. We get out, we walk in, go to the men's section. Beanie selection, very limited. Hat selection, very limited. You know who wears pink more than the guys? The girls. So Chris and I put on our sassy walks and go over there to the ladies section. And lo and behold, they have a myriad, a plethora, a bountiful harvest of pink headwear items. So I get this nice pink Nike hat, and Chris gets that nice pink Nike beanie. And this is the best part. You ready for this? We go to check out, and the guy, his name was Chris actually, nice guy, not that Chris, different Chris. We put our things down, he scans them, and he says, do you have a phone number with us? And I said, oh boy, do I. And I gave him the phone number, 704-621-8820. If anybody in the room also has that phone number memorized, that's really weird. Because that phone number belongs to Dr. Kenny Hibbard.
I need that number.
Dr. Kenny Hibbard almost exclusively purchases his clothes and shoes at Dick's Sporting Goods. So I give them his number often. And guess what this guy, Chris, at the cash register says to me?
You get these for free?
Yes, we used the doctor's rewards dollars. And here's the weirdest part. I'm a boomer, so I'm on Facebook. I know. I hope that you don't think too much less of me. I know. TikTok shop, boomer version. Literally, me and Chris did that no more. We were back before 3, right? Okay, so a maximum of 5 hours ago, we did that. And I'm on Facebook, just taking a little brain break, scrolling. Do you know what I see literally more than 3 advertisements for? Pink Carhartt beanies. Because I keep talking about them, and I kept telling people how proud I was of stealing Kenny's rewards dollars in search for a pink beanie. And your phones are probably gonna show you some pink beanies. And it's weird to me that we live in a world where we don't think anything of that. Your phone literally listens to you at all times. Raise your hand if you have Apple CarPlay in your car. Okay. I had Apple CarPlay in my previous car and the one before that. And the first time I noticed my phone doing some CIA stuff on me, I get in my car at like 7 a.m. and the Apple CarPlay just puts the GPS to work. And I'm like, why do you know where I'm going, dude? Why do you know where I'm going? And I thought it was weird. And then literally the same day, I get in my car to leave here, and guess where it tries to take me via the little map? Home. It's weird, Albert. And I don't think that we talk about how weird that is enough. Yes. But here's where it gets serious. Here's where it gets serious, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this. First slide of the night is this. There's a cosmic fight for our love, our affection, our devotion, and our souls. I don't know if you guys know this, but the most valuable things on earth, the most valuable things, aside from like companies, do you know what they are? It's literally the TikTok algorithm and the Meta algorithm. which is Instagram and Facebook. Those are the two things that are worth the most on earth.
No, that's you.
Thank you.
Because you're my world.
But I think that it is absolutely insane that we're so normal to having things fight for our attention and fight for our affection and our eyes and our thoughts. And if you have a smartphone and social media, I want you to know your phone knows exactly who you are. It might not have all the details, it might not know every single specific thing, but literally the algorithms know what you like. It knows what you stop and watch, and it knows what you just blow right by. It knows the gender and age and the type of content and all of these things that you're giving your attention to, and that is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And our smartphones are no longer the product. Our smartphones are no longer the things that are worth money. We are the product. Our data and our information and all of these things. In 2023, Meta alone made hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars just selling data, just information of, oh yeah, this 17-year-old boy clicked on this, swiped back on that, scrolled past this, watched half of that. And there's just so much stuff that we're being inundated with, fighting for our attention. And that's really weird. So this new series that we're in for the month of February, we're gonna talk about love and sex and dating and marriage and relationships. But before we talk about any of that, I feel like we literally have to talk about the love of Jesus first. Because the whole series is greater love. What does Jesus' love do for us, right? Well, it saves our life. It sets us free. Jesus died on the cross. Yes, but we have to actually understand that before we contextualize that in other relationships. We were talking about it in production meeting, and it almost kind of begs the question. It's almost like too obvious that it's like, well, yeah, Jesus' love purchases our salvation and our eternity, and we're secure and everything. We have the victory, right? We have the ultimate victory. And it's like, yeah, that's a given. But it's a lot harder to live in Jesus' victory if we're not even aware of the fight that his victory has already won us from. Does that make sense? Like there's so many things, and the biggest one that is facing us today is so many apps and algorithms and people are fighting for our attention all the time. And I think this is why the No Leave series was so nice to time. Middle schoolers, can we lock in right here, please? Thank you. I think that's why the No Leave series was so timely, because it's almost just by default that we don't even think about our phones listening to us or our phones knowing who we are or what we do or what we like. But if we want to live in the love of Jesus and live in the victory that he's already bought for us, we have to be aware of the fight that is going on for our souls. Does that make sense? One of my favorite quotes ever is from a guy named Charles Haddon Spurgeon. He lived like 200 years ago in London, and he said this: "Consider how precious a soul must be when both God and the devil are after it." Dude was so ahead of his time, it's crazy. He lived in a time without Instagram, without TikTok. He probably knew less people than you knew by the time you were 12 years old. And even he could see the battle for love and attention and affection going on in the world. Sin wants to grab your heart and grab your eyes and grab your mind and say, hey, I will give you all the fulfillment that you could ever need. Have you guys ever, here's a perfect example. You guys have had like the last 3 months off of school. There's a big difference between resting and rotting. Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes I'll come home from work, and sometimes maybe Bree will go to bed early or something, or Bree and the boys are out of town. And it's really easy for me to lay on the couch and scroll on my phone for like 5 hours. Doing nothing, resting, chilling, relaxing. Maybe you've done that too. How do you feel after that? You literally feel tired. Disagree. Isn't that weird though, that you can lay down and not move a single part of your body except your thumb for hours, and then somehow afterwards you feel more tired? But there's a fight going on for your attention. Middle school boys who said you disagree with that, I'm gonna remember that after we stay up playing Fortnite literally all night on Friday. Because there's so many things that promise us rest and joy and fulfillment that actually are not restful at all. And again, if we want to appreciate Jesus' love for all that it's worth and how transformative Jesus' love can be in our lives, we have to understand the battle that's going on for our love and affection. Make sense? Here's a great example of it in Scripture. Mark chapter 5, starting verse 21. Jesus' ministry is very early. It's kind of just starting out. He hasn't done a whole lot yet, but he just healed a guy with a demon, and the people in that region were like, "You are really freaky, please leave." So Jesus leaves. And then this is what happens. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And seeing Jesus, Jairus fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." And Jesus went with him. You guys have absolutely heard me talk about this story before. This is my favorite story in the Bible, and it's almost like a twofer. Jesus is going to heal Jairus' daughter. He's going with Jairus, but there's something else that happens. I'm not gonna give too much of it away, but I wanna push pause and even just look at Jairus' example here because there's something to learn. Jairus loves his daughter. And Jairus, being a ruler of the synagogue, absolutely had the money and the means and the servants to try and make her better. But evidently, Jairus, being a ruler of this synagogue, he's a Jewish leader. Did Jesus and the Jewish people get along very much? No. But Jairus, because of the love that he has for his daughter, is driven to Jesus, and he asks for help. And I'm wondering, maybe we don't feel Jesus' love, maybe we don't feel Jesus' victory because we don't even go to him whenever we have a problem. And if Jairus can be humble enough to acknowledge, hey, I have a lot of money, I have these doctors, I have these servants getting me these medications for my daughter, but she's sick and she's gonna die, and I love her, so I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I've heard of this guy, Jesus, who can do miracles, so maybe I'll go give him a shout. So that's what he does. Verse 24, and Jesus went with him. There's a second part to verse 24, and it's this. And a great crowd followed him being Jesus, and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. Let's push pause. Let's put on our maturity seatbelts. Fellas in the room. Ladies in the room have different anatomy. Their bodies work differently. That's all I'm gonna say. I would really love it if this side locked in. Can we do that? Cool. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. She'd heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For the woman said, "If I even touch his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And Jesus looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." The biggest thing that I want us to realize in the fight against sin, against the world, against demons, against social media, against porn, against popularity, against fitting in, whatever the heck you want to call it, the fight that we've all engaged in, The fight between trying to fully live our lives for Jesus and the sin that so easily entangles us. The fight. The first thing about the fight is this: trying to fix your own problems apart from Jesus will only make them worse. I promise. Whatever that sin you're trying to fight, maybe you can get a little bit of leeway on it. Maybe you can make a little bit of progress. Maybe you can even stop it entirely. That's awesome. What else is creeping at your door? Because what's really cool about following Christ is it's not about being good enough or not sinning at all. It's about you acknowledging, I am a sinner who needs a Savior. Following Christ, being a Christian, loving Jesus is not about behavior modification. Being a Christian is not even about what you do. It's about trusting and believing in what Jesus has already done. And living the Christian life is probably like the greatest oxymoron of all time, because we're literally called to be living sacrifices. And the reason why this is literally my favorite account in all of the Bible is because I'm not a woman. I do not have the plumbing to have this issue. But I absolutely can see the struggle that she's going through. And I promise you, if you can't yet, you absolutely will be able to relate to this struggle. Look at what it says, verse 25. She had a discharge of blood for 12 years. Let's pause there. Here's what that meant in their culture. She was clearly Jewish. So according to Jewish law, if you were a woman and it was that time of the month, you had to separate yourself from everybody. Because if you were bleeding, you could not be around other people because you were unclean. And all of a sudden, she'd been suffering for 12 years, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Nothing is changing. And then years go by, and she's now just known as the girl who's bleeding. So not only is she unclean and she cannot be around us because ceremonially and ritually she's unclean, so she can't associate with us. Also in their culture, if you had some kind of physical or mental disability, they looked at you because you have that problem, which means God afflicted you because of something that you had done wrong. So not only was this woman isolated physically, everybody knew her business because she had to isolate herself. Absolutely everybody talked about her. Well, you know you can't go around her, right? She's unclean. I get it if we're like, oh, haha, you're unclean, you're dirty, you stink, okay. That had been her life for 12 years. No one associated with her, no one looked at her, no one talked to her. And worse than that, everybody thought it was her fault because clearly she had done something to upset God. Her parents absolutely did not have a relationship with her. There's another story about this where Jesus heals the guy with the withered hand, the man born blind, and his disciples even say, Jesus, why is this guy this way? Is it his fault or is it his parents' fault? And Jesus says, it's actually neither of those. He is this way so that the glory of God can be displayed through him. But this woman was isolated, lived in shame. And even worse, she'd suffered much under many doctors. Saw everybody. How do you think those doctor's visits went? Hey, I have this issue that nobody's ever had, and I'm unclean, and I'm alone. I'm clearly not married. I don't have a ton of money, but I need some help. And she'd seen many physicians, and she'd spent all that she had, which probably wasn't a lot because she didn't have a husband and she couldn't work. And not only did she not get better, she got worse. And this is what sin does in our lives when we just try and muscle our way through it. I promise you, if you are keeping something deep and dark down in your heart or in the back of your mind, and you're like, dude, I can't let anybody know about this. I just need to try a little bit harder and stop. I just need to put on a happy face and this will all just blow over. I'm begging you to just quit trying. Because if you could defeat your sin, that cross wouldn't have had to happen. But it did happen, which means you can't defeat your sin. And there's one guy who can, and he already did, and he's looking at you saying, would you please just give up? I said it a few weeks ago in the most loving way. You are not good enough to defeat sin. You can't do it. You literally can't. Because if you were strong enough to defeat sin, then cool, we'd crucify you and then say, all right, all of us are good because they were strong enough, right? No. There's only one person, and trying to solve your problems apart from Jesus will only make them worse. I don't want you guys to carry burdens that are way too heavy for you that Jesus already took with him to the cross. And he doesn't want you to carry things that he already died to give you forgiveness and freedom from. And it's really ironic, but the trick is to stop trying. Do you guys realize how much power we give our own sin? Have you guys ever thought about that? There are certain buzzwords that I say up here, and some of us giggle and some of us are locked in because we can't talk about those things. And whenever we act like that, we're giving sin power, like pornography and suicidal thoughts and sex and eating disorders. I promise you, I'm not even that old, and I really haven't been doing this all that long. There is not a single thing that any of you could tell me that's happening in your life that would shock me. But whenever we try and keep the sin and the darkness in our back pocket and we can't let anybody know about it, you are giving that sin even more power. And the way that we beat sin is you just stop trying and you let your big brother Jesus handle it for you because he already has. The more you look at, the more you think about, the more you try and hide your sin, the bigger it's gonna get and the harder it is for you to even carry it. The way that you beat sin is you stop looking at the sin and you start looking at Jesus. And you don't stop. You keep looking at Jesus and you keep looking at Jesus. And you do tomorrow. And then all of a sudden a week's gone by. And you're so in your word and you're so prayerful and all these things are happening. Before long, you don't even think, you think, I haven't even thought about that sin in like 3 days. Where is your attention? Where is your affection? Because if we're trying to fight sin on our own, we're gonna fail. And in fact, problems are only gonna get worse. I love this example of this woman. And even more than that, Jesus is the only one who can fulfill our deepest needs. In verse 27, it says, she'd heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment because she said to herself, if I even touch his garments, I will be made well. I wonder how many problems that we have or situations that we're going through. Like I'm talking the deepest of the deep, the darkest of the dark, the things that we can't let anybody know about that we're going through. I wonder how easily solvable those problems would be for Jesus if we shifted our perspective on our problems and shifted our perspective on Jesus. Because this woman had such an odd anatomical problem that is extremely inconvenient and extremely isolating and extremely shameful in their culture. And after trying as hard as she could, after doing everything she knew how, and after spending every single dime that she had, she came to a realization. I've seen and heard about this Jesus guy, and if I can just touch him, every single thing will be made well. And again, I can't promise that Jesus is gonna make your life roses and rainbows and just exactly how you want it to, but I do promise that if you are carrying things that are way too heavy, that are way too shameful, that you can't ever let anybody know about, if you touch Jesus, you will be made well. In fact, it's impossible for you to touch Jesus and you be unwell. And I know sometimes it feels like that's not true. But I promise you that if you touch the hem of his garments, he will make you well. And yeah, there's a lot of self-help. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of things that you can do. But your mental health won't be healed as well by counseling as it will by Jesus. Your self-esteem isn't going to be fulfilled by being popular or getting that girl or making that team. It's only by knowing your identity in Christ. Your feelings about the state of the world will not be fixed by a political party or social justice. that will only happen by knowing that Jesus is the king of your life. And it's so ironic to me that we know all of this, and yet we look for answers and fulfillment and healing in so many other areas. When if we just had the same perspective of this woman, if I can even touch his garment, I will be made well. That is true, friends. The story continues. That's such a funny side quest to me. That Jesus, who's a rabbi, fair, Jewish leader, Jewish teacher, Jesus, is walking around. He just got off the boat. He's walking through the city. Jairus, this really big, important Jewish leader of the synagogue, comes and talks to him and says, hey, my daughter's sick. Will you come look at her? And Jesus is like, sure. And Jesus and Jairus, that conversation makes sense, right? And then all of a sudden, Jesus keeps going, and he's touched by a woman who is ceremonially unclean. She's unmarried in the midst of everybody. This could not be more of an inappropriate conversation that Jesus has with this woman. And I think the coolest part of it all is after everything is all said and done, Jesus looks at her and he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Because I'm fairly confident that no one had called that girl daughter in a very long time. This problem had been going on for 12 years. So maybe she was 23, 24, 25 years old. And because of her uncleanness, because everybody knew about this problem, because, our daughter's still having to sit outside the gates of our house because she's unclean. Everybody knew what that meant. Everybody knew what was going on. And for the first time in forever, Jesus looks at her and says, daughter, your faith has made you well. The coolest part about this whole interaction with Jesus and this woman is this woman who had no right to be talking to a man, culturally, and this unclean woman had no right to be talking to a man. And this unclean woman sure as heck had no right talking to a rabbi. This could not have been a worst case scenario for this woman. And the coolest part about this is whenever Jesus perceived that power had gone out from him, the Greek word for power there is dunamis. That's where we get the word dynamite. It's powerful, it's explosive. And Jesus felt the power go out from him. And he says, who touched me? And what was literally happening whenever Jesus felt that power go out from him. You guys have heard me use this illustration. If I have poop on my hand and I touch Caleb and I just kind of wipe my hand off on him, my hand is clean. So are we both clean? No, we're actually both disgusting now. Thanks, Brad. If you're unclean and you touch someone, clean or unclean, but if you're unclean and you touch someone, they're also unclean. And for the first time in human history, this unclean person touches Jesus. And the unclean person doesn't make the clean person unclean. The only clean person who's ever walked the earth makes this unclean woman clean. So let me save you a lot of time and pain in your life. If you feel unclean, if you feel icky, if you feel shame, if you feel guilt, the only way for those deep, dark feelings to go away is to come and to touch Jesus. That is the only way. I lived a lot of my life as if that were not true. I lived a lot of my life trying to prove myself and validate myself and get others' approval, and it only made things worse. So please, if you hear me say one thing tonight, it's if you are unclean and you know it, if you've got a lot of stuff going on and you know it, I want you to stop trying to beat that stuff, and I want you to come up behind Jesus and just touch him. Because in an instant, power, dynamite, cleanness will go from Jesus onto you. Because that's who he is. I gave a very similar message to this to Charlotte Christian a few months ago, and it's pretty funny to think about. But Jesus is on the way to Jairus' house because Jairus is like, my daughter could die at any moment. Jesus, I really need you to come to my house because you can make her well. So they were probably not walking slowly, wouldn't you think? So they're going along, and then this woman touches Jesus, and then there's this whole exchange, whole conversation. And you got to think Jairus is probably like standing just off to the side like, my daughter's dying. We got to go, Jesus. And then you read this as a parent and it just sucks. Verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house someone who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? But overhearing what the people were saying, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, Jairus, do not fear, only believe. It's a lot easier said than done. And Jesus allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, who's the brother of James. They came to the house of Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when Jesus entered, he said to the people, why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping. And everybody laughed at him. But Jesus put everybody outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went into where the little child was. Taking her by the hand, Jesus said to her, Talitha Kumi, which means, little girl, I say to you, arise. And immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years old. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this and told them to give her something to eat. Man, I had tears in my eyes as I was typing this on my computer yesterday because of what a throwback point this is. Because there's 3 times that Jesus raises other people from the dead. The first time, it's a widow's son. We don't know how old he is, but he's clearly old enough to be providing for his mom. He's being wheeled out of their house in a casket, and Jesus literally just touches it and says, hey, stop crying. Get up, young man. And the guy's just back. Wild scenes. The next time is this, where Jesus says, she's not dead, she's asleep. Everybody laughs at him. Then he takes the young girl's hand and says, Talitha Kumi, which means wake up, and the girl wakes up. And the third and final time that Jesus raises somebody else from the dead is Lazarus, which is much more of a scene in John chapter 11. And again, people laugh at him whenever he says, hey, take away the stone. But the point that I can see so clearly in all of these is that Jesus is the only one who can make you come alive. Anybody wearing the camp shirt here? Not that one. Not that one. The one that says come alive on it. Man, best camp ever. And I think there's almost a disconnect in our brains, just like Mary and Martha, where we see Jesus saying and doing these things. And we see, yeah, obviously Jesus is the only person that could make this guy's little girl come back to life. Yeah, of course we know that. And then we look at the things and the situations in our lives that are dead, and we're like, well, I better work harder. I better get better grades. I better work out more. I better get prettier. I better get their attention. And it's kind of funny almost whenever you take a step back and look at it that there's some dead things in our life that we're really trying to make alive, or at least look alive. And we just try and try and try and try and try. And then we read a story like this and we're like, well, yes, Jesus is the only one that can make things come back to life. And it's like, how often do we live in that reality? The situations and the circumstances, the mental health, the family drama, the backstabbing friend group, the breakup, the deadness in your mind and your heart. No substance, no material, no person. Nobody can make that situation, that circumstance, you come alive except for Jesus. And he's gonna do it on his terms. I think so often we would almost rather sit in our discomfort, in our pain, and our sorrow, because if we really trusted Jesus, we don't really know what that would look like. And at least here I'm comfortable because I know how bad my life sucks right now. So no, Jesus, I'm fine. At least we act like that, right? I want Jesus' words to Jairus to be true for us. Where he looks at him and he says, don't fear, only believe. Because I think a lot of the times I'll look at situations in my life or situations that I'm privy to because of my job or something like that. And there's such a tendency to feel fear and to worry and to wonder how Jesus is gonna make this situation good. And Jesus' response is, don't fear, only believe. And I think there's probably a lot of us in the room tonight that are living in some pretty big sorrows because of something in our life that we loved. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your mental health, maybe it's your relationship with yourself. I don't know, but there's a lot of things in our life that can be dead sometimes, and we kind of live in grief. Whenever Jesus, if he was standing right next to us, he would say, that thing's not dead, it's only asleep. And I wonder how much we live in the reality that Jesus can make that thing come to life. So this whole series, right, is what can Jesus' love do for us? I was talking to Chris about it. I was talking to in the production meeting, and I want to put this on a t-shirt, I think. And it's this is the final point, right? And it's the whole crux of this week. I said it at Winter Retreat. Everything that your heart is searching for, whether it's healing or life itself, is found in the love of Jesus. That's just true. Every single thing that your heart, that your mind, everything that you want for your life is going to be found in Jesus' love. And I'm not saying that Jesus is gonna make you a homeowner one day, or that you're gonna get into the college of your dreams, or that boy's finally gonna ask you out. But I promise you, every longing, every hope, every dream, every desire, every single thing that our hearts need can only be found in Jesus. As the band comes out, I just wanna ask you to close your eyes, because this one night, we're gonna have some time to pray, we're gonna have some time to respond. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that these two accounts of healing or resurrection happen at the same time. I know there's people walking, oh my gosh. But I want you to consider, and maybe you can empathize with the woman who lived for 12 years of her life. Close your eyes. I want you to think about this for real. Can you empathize with, commiserate with the woman who lived in isolation, in shame, in sorrow, in grief, over a situation that she didn't cause, over a situation that she didn't have any control over, and over a situation that flat out sucked? And she tried everything. She saw everybody who she thought could help her. She spent every single dime that she had to her name. And after all this great effort, after all the trying and the muscling it through, the prayers, nothing got better. It got worse. And I know that there's situations that we bring in on our backs and in our hearts and in our mind that are so heavy. And I can imagine Jesus looking at you with the same eyes that he looked at this woman with after she mustered up the courage to have this wild idea. Maybe if I can just touch him, I'll be made well. And I can only think about Jesus looking at you, the frail little creatures from the dust that we are, with so much sympathy as we try to just carry our sins and try and push through these situations. And he's looking at us, begging us to just come touch the edge of his robe. And immediately his cleanliness, his goodness, his mercy, his grace, his favor, and his sacrifice would completely heal whatever the disease that we're going through is. Maybe that problem, Like the woman with the flow of blood, maybe that problem has gone on so long in your life, it's almost like, just like Jairus, maybe you're just dead. Maybe that thing that you really loved and cared about and spent so much of your life with, maybe it's your parents' marriage, maybe it's your best friend or your boyfriend or girlfriend or that friend group or that sports team, and you know, time just kind of passes and Jesus doesn't seem to show up on time. And all of a sudden that thing is dead. And just like Jesus walked in on, there's weeping, there's wailing, there's crying, and there's commotion. I'm wondering if you're strong enough to tell God how you really feel. Because he will meet us here. He wants you to touch the hem of his garment so that he can look you in the eye and say, your faith has made you well. Because I'll be flat out honest with you, spirituality aside, I get so sad and tired of watching teenagers try and struggle through the biggest emotional situation that I've ever seen in my entire life. You're not strong enough, you're not supposed to be there, and you're not supposed to be carrying that weight. Jesus wants you to come to him and to tell him how you really feel and to confess your sins and say, Jesus, I know this is wrong. I've been trying my hardest, but I keep looking at this a different way, but would you just give up and let Jesus take over? Would you let Jesus in the room and take that situation by the hand so he can look at you and look at whatever is dead in your life and say, Talitha Kumi, wake up. We're about to do a song here in a minute, and you can stay where you're at. You can keep your heads down. You can stand up and lift your arms. You can come to the cross. You can grab some friends and pray. I don't really care. But what I do care about is we have 10 more minutes of the whole pursuit. So let's not giggle and let's not distract others, but let's get right with God and be honest with God. Maybe that's a prayer. Maybe that's worship. Maybe that's having a conversation. I don't know what that looks like for you, but I'll pray. Jesus, we love you. God, we thank you for who you are and how you move. God, we thank you that we are never too unclean for you. That God, our uncleanliness and our gunk and our shame and our sin, God, it doesn't drive you away. It doesn't make you look at us with contentment. But God, you look at us with compassion and you heal us. God, I know that there are situations and people and hearts here tonight, God, that need some healing. God, maybe that need to come back to life. Would you meet us here? We love you, Jesus.